talk and or type for a living. Like I'd hope we would, but you know, people come to us for like sports related things and amongst are just general noises. So that's your cold open. Um, Welcome back to another edition of the Husky Women's Hoop Show. I think this is
Zero, zero,
episode
no, zero.
three.
I'm so sorry. Zero.
Ruh-roh.
Sorry. Stop. No, stop. I
I
know.
think this is episode three. As you'll notice, we do not have our friend Rowan with us, unfortunately. Timing's tough, with three people, and I've said on the other shows, timing with like a bunch of different people to set up and coordinate is always difficult. Plus, I like doing these shows, with how the schedule is since we've started it, you like have two games, two games, two games, and now with this one, we'll have two games in the next week to look at with Minnesota. I almost said Wisconsin again, not playing them again, and Oregon coming up. So obviously Bella is here with me, and Zira is just kind of around in the background, I guess. Um, yeah, two pretty big wins over the last few games for Washington. I was texting Rowan after the Rutgers game and she was like, I don't know if we need to do like a post game for this one considering they blew out a team they should have. And I was like, yeah, it's true. Um, but to get, to handle business, I think that's what I said last week, right? It's just to handle business. Um, and they did that. I mean, 83-65 over Rutgers before I get over to the Nebraska game and the Cornhuskers. Um, just nice to, it's kind of remarkable. And this is something like that I pointed out, and I know you've got something else to look at, so I won't bring it up. But like in this one over Rutgers, Savia Sellers, who has been, the driving force for this Washington team this year, just 7 points on 3 for 9 shooting, 1 for 3. Nope, sorry, 1 for 5 from the 3-point line in 30 minutes of play, including three personal fouls, six turnovers. So not the best game from Savia, but you get 16 from Hannah Steins, including 7 assists in this one. I believe that's a career high in assists. Delia 22 points in this one, 8 rebounds, two short of a double double, and then Ella Dean burst out in this one with 28 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists for a pretty nice, well-rounded game from the junior guard. Just looking at this one, I mean, Washington started off pretty well and they really didn't look back. It was kind of nice to not have to worry too much about this game, right? I think the only thing that stood out to me was the fact that Washington only shot two free throws. Um, and they only got 8 bench points in this one, but I don't know. Bill, do you have anything individually for this game, or do you want me to just go over kind of the Nebraska and we can kind of lump them both?
Well, yeah, I think Tina Langley was also surprised by the two free throws and didn't want to comment for, reasons we know coaches generally don't want to comment on officiating. Um, I think one, it's Savia still had 6 assists in this game. So I think what's really important is Savia finding a way to be effective even if her shot isn't there. And I also think maybe it shows that the team is finding a way to use the attention that Savia is drawing in order to get some other players open. Daniels also had 3 blocks and 2 steals in this game. Um, I think, you said like eight bench points, not that many. At the same time, we've had multiple games this season where they have had 0 to 2 bench points. Um, so I think, yes, 8 bench points isn't a lot, but I still think it's going in the right direction. I think she's about to grab a squeaky toy, and I might have to actually get up and stop her. Um, I don't know how much of it you can hear. Um, they also, out rebounded Rutgers 35-21. I think that was really important. Put it down. Zero, drop it. Not the time. Not the time. Okay. Here's her giraffe. Here's the dog. We're done. We're done.
She wanted in on the conversation about dogs.
Yeah. So I think there were a lot of great things from that game. But like you said, it was kind of just like what they needed to do. It was what was expected. Um, and they needed it to be a convincing win. And in the end, they did that. Um, and I think it was just a lot of, I loved seeing Hannah Steins have 16 points. Just generally, I mean, as much as, Savia is huge for this team, and obviously she's an incredibly capable scorer, I think it's really great that they can win games when she's not scoring. I think that's important because ideally you win games and everyone is scoring, including her. But if you can find ways to win when, arguably, usually your first choice isn't really hitting their shots, that's how you win the games you need to win and also, you know, cause those upsets.
Hmm.
Um, I can sort of half transition us into the Nebraska game. Something that stood out um, was there was a lot more scoring from behind the three-point line in the game against Rutgers. They only had 34 points in the paint, whereas against Nebraska, they had 50 points in the paint.
Yeah.
And both games, they scored 83 points. So I think that's
Oh
another good
yeah.
sign is like they can win games when they are really hot from three, and they can win games, inside beating teams inside the paint where they aren't necessarily the strongest team, and certainly at times have been pointed out to us by other coaches that they are a three-point shooting team. Okay,
It is
I'm sorry. Can we
interesting to kind
pause for like
of
1 second so I can just like deal with her? And
um as we've solved the other dog situation.
yes,
Um, it is interesting to look at the similarities in these two games. Obviously, you point out the score, you talk a little bit. Um, I won't maybe talk about this. I'll leave this to you, but I know the bench did see a bump in the second game to 18 points, but it's also interesting, maybe less so of less importance, or maybe you think it's more important that we've seen in these last two games, Brennan McDonald has kind of been the forward off the bench, the big off the bench, as opposed to Tyreke. In the last two games she's played, I think, at least per the UW live stats, no minutes. Sorry, 2 minutes. No, 1 minute total. Sorry, they they gave one to Shayla Gilmer in the Rutgers game. Um, I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like we've talked about Brenna like a lot earlier in the season, and I think during the road trip that saw them win in Northwestern and Illinois. But since then, it's just kind of been no Brenna McDonald. So I mean, she wasn't incredibly like she didn't have like the biggest game in the world, but against Rutgers, 2 points, 5 rebounds, an assist, which it's nice to see. I should pull up the
in
home
14
stats
minutes, that's
box.
not bad word. That's not bad work by any means.
No. Yeah, 14 minutes, 14 plus minus as well. So it's not like she was 2 blocks as well. There we go. I needed the full box. Um, so I mean, she was efficient in that game. I oh
Nebraska, she had 2 rebounds in 8 minutes, but was 2 of 2 from the floor on her field goal attempts for her 4 points in that game.
so like I don't know. It's giving you something, and it's just really interesting to see how Tyra has been such. She was such a consistent starter for this team until what, like the last 8 games or so. I don't remember how long they've been going with the smaller, like the four guard lineup and really diminished her role. But interesting to see Brennan McDonald utilized more. Not too much, obviously, minutes wise, but see her utilized more. And see really their six person off the bench being Devin Coppinger, which has been a thing longer than that, right? But seeing her get those minutes and like you guys talked about it last week, right? With like how top heavy this roster is. Um like and how it probably is beneficial to bring Devin off the bench. It's still just interesting to me to look at Chloe Briggs and I don't know. I feel like Devin could do what Dev Chloe Briggs is doing, but that's my spiel on it. Like it was really satisfying as I go from similarities just talking about Nebraska to see how Washington played in this game. Like I think it was relatively tighter at the half. Um yeah. Washington led by 2 at the half, but then they have a 21-5 third quarter. Um, and we were
That
texting
was
about this,
insane.
and I think Rowan goes, "Oh, they're leading by what was like 15," and you're like, "That says 25."
Yeah.
And that's not to make fun of Rowan. It's just funny to think that this team hasn't really had that since like what, the Husky Classic. So yeah, no, I mean, I think to wrap up my rambles and to let you actually talk about these two games, it's really good to see them. We talked about it last week. You need to take care of these games as we close out the season for a myriad of different things. Um, They've done that. They've done that in relatively convincing fashion. They've gotten production from a Brennan McDonald who hasn't gotten hardly any touches or minutes on the court for a while. And as you talked about with Savia just a minute ago, they haven't really had to rely on her dropping 30, 25, whatever. Like you've been able to get L pretty consistently. Hannah Stein's oh, and I will say L in the Nebraska game. I keep wanting to say Wisconsin hit 1,000 career points. She's just a junior. And Hannah Stein's hit 200 career assists in that game as well. So it's exciting. I think Rowan might have said it last time, but it feels like they are starting to click at the right time, and that would be huge for them. So I'll stop. But I don't know. It's fun. This has been fun basketball from them the last few games.
Yeah, I think, I'll try and remember which points you made and my counterpoints. Um, going back to Brenna, I think it's been great to see her have some just efficient minutes. I think that's one of the biggest things when you have players coming off the bench is they need to be efficient because they're not going to play 20, 30, 40 minutes. And to, have 5 rebounds in 14 minutes or, hit both of your attempts in 8 minutes. Um, she's not necessarily a player who's taking a lot of your shots. I certainly, at times, I think it's just so valuable just to give either Delia Daniels a break or if she gets in foul trouble. I think those are sort of the biggest situations we're seeing Brenna get minutes. And they did get some minutes together, I think, to sort of match opposition lineups. But I think because that is where they are probably the least deep, seeing Brenna have these really good, um, you think, oh, she plays 10, 15 minutes, like it's not that impactful. Oh, what? I don't know what was going on there. Impactful. For some reason, I kept saying it and it didn't sound like a word. Um, impactful minutes is really great. I
You'll
think,
get it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, another player off the bench who I've been pleasantly surprised with lately is Tegan Brown. She had 6 against Nebraska, I think 4 against Rutgers. Yeah. Um, and again, she's not playing a ton of minutes, but she's coming in, she's playing good defense, she's cutting hard, so she's getting a lot of those sort of backdoor cuts or wide open layups, whether it's in transition or for making those hard cuts. But those are important plays because your your teammates are tired and maybe maybe El Ladine has played 25 minutes at that point and she's not making that cut, but you have Tegan Brown come in and make that cut and you get a wide open layup. And as long as you hit those shots, right? Like those are impactful minutes. So I think it's been really great to see that from Tegan because her minutes have been pretty inconsistent this year. Um, just in terms of like production and how much she plays. Um, I've also loved Devin's minutes. You brought up the point about her starting over Chloe Briggs potentially, and I do want to give some credit to Chloe because I feel like she is good in her role. She knows that with Eladine, Delia Daniels, Savia Sellers, and Hannah Steins, she is not the first shot option, and she shouldn't be the first shot option. But she isn't taking away shots from her teammates. She is taking the wide open shots that her team wants her to take. She is passing the ball. She has been really effective when they're breaking the press. Her ball handling has been solid. She's keeping the ball moving, and she is also making those hard cuts. Like we've seen, I think a lot of her buckets just come from either running in transition or being the player to make that cut and get the wide open layup. And again, hitting those wide open layups because sometimes you miss and you can't have that. You're not gonna be a USC, a UCLA, Ohio State. You're not gonna beat those teams if you don't hit those gimmies essentially. Um, there's so many things uh I think, you
Quickly, I
know,
will say it's nice that you are repping Brennan McDonald's former school. That's what this is, right? That's how you planned it out.
yeah, no, it's entirely why I wore this and not because it's one of my older sweatshirts that I wear when I get home to get covered in dog and cat hair.
Obviously. Quickly, you talked about, I will do this because I'm in the background. I've done it just to back you up on this. Tegan Brown, the minutes have been really inconsistent. It's really interesting to see like at least 14 and then goes 9, 7, 5. Like she only had 5 against Southern. It's kind of funny to me. One against Michigan State, like from Indiana to Rutgers, she played 9 or less minutes in all those games, and then the last 2 games, 10 against Rutgers, 23 against Nebraska. Brennan McDonald is someone like it was interesting to see that sort of similarity too. Not like the hard sort of numbers from Indiana or anything, but like really like 1 against Maryland, 3 against Oregon. Probably could have used her more in that one, maybe. I don't know. Like interesting to see that. And then with Tyra, to put a bow on my point, like since the Iowa game, Iowa was her last start. Since Iowa, she hasn't started, and she's played 13 or less minutes in every game except for the Southern California game when they were combating all that size, right? So interesting to see that, but just wanted to throw those in there.
Yeah, and I think, it's what we've been talking about a lot is they needed bench production. They needed those players to step up in big moments and they've done that in these past two games and I think it'll be really important to win their next two games and potentially anything in a tournament. Um, I think El Ladine and Delia Daniels have been fantastic the past two games. 28 points two times in a row for El, 22 and 21 for Delia. Consistently getting nearly 10 rebounds, if not fully getting the double double. Delia also had 5 assists against Nebraska. I think she's doing so much for them. And it's, when she hasn't been in foul trouble, which I think she's gotten under control a little bit more, um, she can do so much for them. And, the one of the Storm PR people was asking after the Rutgers game if 28 was, kind of high or surprising for El Ladine. Like they asked whether it was a season high. I had to say no, she scored 40 earlier in the season. But since that 40-point game, she hadn't necessarily been putting up 30 points a night. And so while it's not surprising to see her score 28 points, I don't want to pretend like that's an insignificant amount of points or like that isn't an impressive feat. Like she really is taking on a massive scoring load. I mean, she's a shooting guard. It's what she does. She wants to shoot the ball. But she's been so good. And I think particularly against Nebraska, there were a couple times she did a really great job of, realizing that they were guarding her from the 3-point line a little too aggressively, really, really worried about her 3-point shot, which is what a lot of people worry about initially, and using that to either get her teammates open or get to the basket and get a layup. So I think it's been a great combination of seeing players recognize how they're being guarded, recognize how their teammates are being guarded, and finally sort of putting it together
Mm.
where they are able to connect and use those. So Savia realizes, she's she's not really getting shots off, but can get her teammates open and her teammates realizing it at the same time. All of that sort of coming together, I think it's a really great time for that to happen. And it's part of why we're seeing such balanced scoring. I think Nebraska's a little odd because outside of El and Delia, no one else was in double digits whatsoever.
No, yeah, that
But
was
but you also had 18 bench points, which my guess is a high for the season. Um, I'm not entirely sure, but if it's not the high, it is up there,
yeah.
except for maybe some early season games. So I think it's it's just sort of a lot of the right things coming together at a good moment. It's also just, it's a 21 point win over a team that is 9-8 in conference play after the loss and is considered pretty solidly an NCAA tournament team. Um, her hoop stats called them a scary sleeper in the tournament, a team that could really, cause upsets and is projected as a number 9 seed in the tournament. And so defeating a very solid team by 21 points on the road on their senior night of all nights,
Yeah.
which I which was a little rough. Alexis Markowski has had a terrific career in Nebraska, and I'm sure that's not how she wanted her last home game to go. Um, but getting that kind of win, I think, is a massive statement that they needed. It's not a ranked team, but it is a team that is respected and understood that they have the talent to cause upsets. So to get such a big win away on senior night, I think is a massive boost to their tournament resume and also just to their confidence. Honestly,
hmm
I think, they've certainly had road wins,
Yep.
but they hadn't been successful on the road in a little while. And I think sometimes you just need a reminder that, like, hey, we can freaking go off. And we can beat a Nebraska by 21 points. So, it's not that I think this team lacks belief in themselves, but I think it never hurts to have that sort of confidence boost of such a solid statement win, regardless of the team being ranked or not.
Yeah. I mean, just generally, I'm sure that confidence is nice to have. Like, I think we talked about it. I think that was last week. Like, just getting shots to fall can be so big, right? For anybody. And like you're saying, with like a win like this against a team that, as you mentioned, will is pretty solidly in in a spot and should be. Um, it should be good for them just going forward, closing out against let me see here, a Minnesota team that's I mean, they're not 8-8 in conference play. What is it? What is this? 20-8 overall. Jesus Christ. It's not a bad team, and they're on the lower end of the Big Ten here. Like, you'll have to handle that. And then of course there's Oregon who's 10-7. Like, I don't know. I like you bring those things up, and it's just I think it's all beneficial. And it, like I said to you off camera and then on here, it's just they've been playing really exciting basketball. And to see it click, to not have to worry about Savia, you know, seemingly doing everything, being able to distribute. Seeing we talked about Delia Daniels' versatility last episode, and it feels like that got emphasized this week. Um, and her senior night's coming up too, which is remarkable. She didn't want to talk about that after the Rutgers game. I think she was going to get a little bit emotional. Um, I don't know. It's just fun. Like, I know that this isn't like a perhaps a group that's going to lose a ton of people next year. Like, the players that they lose will be impactful. Losing Delia Daniels is going to be a big question mark, right? Who's going to fill in that? Tyra, still valuable. I mean, her usage has gone down, but still a valuable presence. Brenna's also grad student, right? So you'll
Yeah,
lose
you are
her.
you are losing all of your bigs that have
Yep.
played basically anything more than
Any
a minute.
significant minutes. Yeah. So, I mean, it just goes back to what I said at the beginning of the show when we started it. Like, I'm concerned for that. But, like, this is also why I think I talked to Coach Langley about this during your weekly availability last week when we got it before the Rutgers game. Like, how big is this, battling against these good Big Ten teams going into this Big Ten tournament, the prospect of playing in this NCAA tournament, right? For a group that you will largely get back. You're gonna get Eladine back. Like, well, unless anything crazy happens, please, Jesus, don't let anything crazy happen. Um, our friend Rowan had a weird dream that L transferred, so I had to just squish that. You'll get L back. You'll get Hannah Steins back. Obviously you'll have another year of Savia. Like, Devin will benefit from this. Like, it's just exciting because this sort of experience does help you going forward, right? So, um, I did want to bring I talk about the tournament. We've t like I think it's warranted that we keep talking about the tournament. Like I don't want it to be the whole thing that we talk about, but considering they haven't done so since Kelsey was there, like it's important. Bella, you sent something to us about I think it was the next had
It
like
was her hoop stats.
her hoop stats had something about Washington needing to um win
Basically, their
winning.
last three games.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
Nebraska, Minnesota, and Oregon.
And well, I think the thing was interesting to me was like the sentence they've been anything but outstanding in Big Ten play, which sure, but and maybe I'm like too willing to like I don't know. I do think it's important that we look beyond the head to head, just the paper record, right? Because as someone else who has watched almost all these games, right? Like they haven't been skunked in more than a handful of them, right? So like I understand the head to head record itself, the head to head, sorry, the conference record itself isn't the most amazing thing in the world, but like I do think they should get more credit than that. Um, you know, does that make
And
sense?
I, yeah, I mean, I think, I honestly don't even recall reading that sentence, but I think it's fair to say they haven't been outstanding in conference play.
Yeah.
They've lost some games they shouldn't have lost. I mean, I think about the Michigan games; those were rough, and they haven't necessarily shown their best at times. I think
No.
Nebraska is probably the closest to them showing their best. And even that was a lot of unforced turnovers on Nebraska's side. It's not like UW didn't play very good defense, but some of it almost just felt like Nebraska fell apart. So even that really big win wasn't like the most outstanding play we've seen from them. And I think the problem is they're being compared to a UCLA, a USC,
Yeah, which
like
is
teams.
like
And so I think it's a fair comparison when you consider the breadth of talent in the Big Ten. I don't see it as an insult necessarily to say that they haven't been outstanding in conference play because I don't think that we've seen their best. I think
no,
this team has a lot of brilliant players, and it's not like they haven't had chemistry, but they just haven't put it all together when they need
no,
to.
no.
And
Not
so,
consistently at least.
yeah, so I think, I think coaches are very aware of the threats that Washington poses. Even Lindsey Gottlieb after the USC game
Yes.
said she thinks Washington is a tournament team. And so I think it's it's a tough situation they're in because they themselves and opposition teams know that they have the talent, but it hasn't necessarily showed up in the performances.
No.
And
Well,
and I think they might be very solidly in the tournament by this point if it had.
yeah. It's
So
just
it's
so
it's a
fascinating because they haven't put it together like all together, but they've still pushed the best in the country. Like I think at the end of the year when like uh, maybe if it's my own writing or when we all talk about it, right? Like they were so they should have beaten LSU had it not been for poor execution at the end of the game, right? Like the UCLA game is tough, but I mean what was it the stat they led for 27 minutes or something like that?
that was the USC game. UCLA
Oh,
they
sorry,
were the
UCLA, yeah, USC. Sorry. UCLA, I
UCLA
mean
they
they
were the
were in
first
it.
team to out rebound them.
Yeah, like so yeah, you get what I'm saying though, right? It's just like they've been within the cusp of being a team that, should be ranked. Like I don't when was the last time that they were ranked? Do you know
Actually,
that?
it was
Like
yeah, I do because it was last season after they beat WSU, but it was only for like a week or two.
so yeah, like when was the last time they were consistently ranked? Like so I don't know. I like at the end of the day, I am very happy with where the program is going. Like I think I talked about this on another show. It's never good to look at comments from anybody on the internet. But like people saying it's like Tina Langley, like maybe you need a new coach. I was like, I think it's just way too early to touch that. Like as you talked about with the other coaches, how they've talked about what Tina has built and is building, considering you're in the new conference, the recruiting classes that you're stacking, like I'm excited to cover this team going. Like it's been a thrill to do this. It's just when I do reset on myself and look at this now, like I so want this group of players to reach that tournament, whether it is a delay, because yeah, like you're saying, they haven't hit that, and if they had, we'd be talking about I think seeding and not if they're getting in. Um, but I don't know. It's been just so fun for me to watch them push these teams. Not be able to put the lid on a win, a big like statement win, but you know,
I
I
mean, I
get
think
it. I get that they haven't been outstanding in conference play, but they've pushed the best to me, and that's what kills me so much.
I think Tina said it after the Rutgers game when I asked about how much they were thinking about getting into the NCAA tournament,
Yes.
being such a process-driven team. And she talked about, yes, we're a process-driven team, but at the end of that, there is a goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they want to make the tournament, and to me it seems like they know that they can make the tournament, and maybe there's even a little bit of like we want to make it for Delia in her senior year because I want them to make it for Delia in her senior year, um, or I guess her graduate year technically.
Yes.
But there so much of this year has been a learning experience for them,
Mm-hmm.
and there's been a
Mm-hmm.
lot of difficult things to put together. But I think we've seen the benefits of them being process driven is they have learned from every game and they are starting to put those things together now at the end of the season, but they weren't quite at that point earlier in the season in order to get some of those wins they might have needed.
I think learning experience is a great way to put that. I think that's a great way to
Yeah,
put that. Because
you know,
that's
they
all she's talked about, right? Is growth points and stuff
right, like
like that.
they're upset about the losses obviously, but they are very focused on learning from every single one. And I think after every single game, we've been able to point to something like, okay, they did that poorly in the last game, or even maybe the past two games, and then they fixed it in this game. And, we said it with the guard rebounding. Like they had sort of fallen
Mm.
off of it a little bit, and now they're back on it. So it's some of those things, these are still college kids. They're not professionals. I mean, they're as
Yeah.
close as you can get to professionals, but they're college kids. And it takes time to learn things and for that to become natural and ingrained. And I think we're just getting to the point of the season where those things are maybe really sticking in their heads and making a difference. And so I think the team absolutely is going to push and try to make the NCAA tournament. I can't imagine that it's not in the mind of all of those players. Um, but at the same time, they are going to remain dedicated to the process.
Mm.
And the end goal of that process is to make the NCAA tournament. It's to make it far in the tournament at some point. They know that's not happening immediately, but they are working to get there, and they know that they only have so many years in college. So they are going to do everything they can to put all of those lessons together at the right time. And I have some hope that they can do that based on their their last two their last two games. I think Minnesota will be a massive test. It'll be interesting to see if they can, find some of whatever road magic they found in Nebraska and get get a big win on the road and hopefully I mean I think it's just those they have to win those games against the teams around them.
Hmm.
Rutgers was you had to beat the team below you.
Yeah.
Nebraska,
That would have
but
been bad.
but Nebraska and Minnesota and Oregon are all teams that are generally around you in the Big Ten standings, even if they're
Hmm.
considered, more solidly uh, tournament teams or not. And it will show bracketologists, hello Charlie Creeb, it will show them if they can beat these teams that they are on their level and they deserve to be in the tournament. And that's what these players want. That's what Tina Langley wants. That's what the program wants. Will they get there this season? I hope so. But we won't really. I think we'll have a better idea after the Minnesota game.
Yeah.
But we may not really even know until after the Oregon game or after the first game of the conference. It'll depend on other results and whatnot. So I think, it's just I feel like I'm saying I think 7 million times, but I do think
There's a lot of
I
thinking
th
going on.
I think too much. Um, it'll be really, really interesting, and I'm excited to see them putting the stuff together because we've seen some great performances. We've seen some really entertaining basketball. We know these girls are lovely and work very hard,
Oh
and are
yeah.
very proud of,
They
of
always
of
talk
the
about being
work.
in the gym.
Yeah, of the the work they put in, and it's great to see them find success that we know they want and are looking to get. It's why they are at this program.
Yeah, I think to put a close on this before we do talk maybe about some bracketology. Sir Cream of Charles. Um, like I think the way that I view the short term and the long term is this. In the short term, I'm like you said, I'm really glad that they do seem to be putting things together. Learning from things is important. Like, because again, as I mentioned, I do think it'll set them up for success going forward. But like to keep it short term. Um, it does feel like they are starting to click or starting to realize, to learn from things that might have held them back previously. It's like when they didn't get Savia or L to drop 20 plus, they were screwed and they didn't, score more than 70. There was a stretch of games where they didn't score more than 70, and one of the Percy from the Seattle Times was like, Charles, when was the last time they scored more than 70? And I was like, I don't know. And it had been like 2 months at that point. I was like, that's bad. That's real bad. So it's like that is encouraging to me. And I think my short term is I'm glad that they're learning, and I have hope that this is a trend for them, not like a flash, right? A trend that they can carry in because it's like so many things I hear in other sports about getting into the playoffs is it matters who gets hot at the end of the year. I'm not saying for sure that's what's happening here, but I would love for it to be. And in the long term, yes, like as you talked about with them learning, this will benefit them going forward. Like Devin Coppinger, I'm sure will take all of this. Again, I'm very high on the Devin Coppinger like hype train here. Um, like who knows what the hell and Savia Sellers will level up to next year, right? How Ella Dean and Hannah Steins will close out their senior careers, like we'll figure out we'll figure out the backcourt when we get there, I guess. But like I do think this is a nice foundation for Tina in the Big Ten and with these classes because I don't know if you get anything out of this class with Nina Kane, with Sienna Harvey, with Bryn McGoy, with Bryn Martin, like with the scoring that Bryn McGoy alone could bring, again, it has to translate. I don't know. It's just very exciting. All right, let me shut up. Let me look at Sir Charles Cream's bracketology. This drops today, conveniently. Today at 6 a.m. our time, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And
Thanks,
Bella, it's just
Charles.
kind of nice to look at this and his like first three for bracket watch and UW not be in first team out or last team in. It was like they were there for the last like 4 weeks. I was like, I'm tired of being on the bubble. Please save me. They used a different picture for Lauren Betts this time. They used the same one for like the last 4 weeks, which is nice. And then I always have to remember that when they say Huskies in like the actual writing part that they do for this, they're not
You mean
talking about
UConn?
Washington. They're talking about UConn.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, leave me alone, Paige and Fudd. Um, so on the bubble here is Washington's in the last four in with Iowa State and with Washington is in with Iowa State and Washington. No, is with Iowa State, Harvard, and Virginia Tech. The last four out being Princeton, South Florida, St. Joseph's, and Arizona. They have Washington as an 11 seed. Oh, nope. I wanted to see where they would be in this. They have Washington as an 11 seed that would, I think, be playing against Iowa State if I'm reading this correctly. Um, but like, I don't know. It feels good to like not be the last one listed, and oh, they'd have to play in Lexington, Iowa State slash Washington, and then would have to play Louisville. Okay. All right. I don't shouldn't care about who they're playing. I would be happy just to get in, but I don't know, like, and this kind of leaves us into where we are with like the up next, because as you've talked about, the last two games of the season, the regular season, because they could still do something during the Big Ten tournament to boost their chances, right? I feel like you kind of want to be in a better position and not have to worry about a massive upset in the Big Ten tournament, right? Which if trends are showing anything, it is that they're kind of doing that. But like, I guess my question to you, as opposed to just having you talk about their chances, is do they absolutely need to win the next two games to feel safe about the tournament? Like,
Yeah, I think so. Um, Minnesota and Oregon are so close in terms of what they are considered ranking wise
mhm.
and talent wise. You could maybe get away with like a super close win, but I almost feel like that would hurt their chances because of how many of those close games that they've had
Yeah,
where they haven't been the winners, and that being kind of tough. So I do think they need both wins. They don't need them to be Nebraska 21 point wins,
but they
but
just need a W,
you've got
flat
to
out.
win. I think Oregon, should feel very doable. They know how close they played them last time.
Hmm.
Hopefully they have a plan
That's
for Deja
another
Kelly this
growth
time
point.
around. Yeah. Hopefully they have a plan for Deja Kelly this time around. They get, the boost of the home crowd. Oregon had it last time.
Hmm.
Um, Minnesota, I haven't watched as much of, and they're not exactly on the bubble for the tournament. But her hoop stats sort of considers Oregon and Minnesota like 10 and 11 seeds that are, in the tournament, but Minnesota isn't necessarily solidly in the tournament. And so if you can sort of sneak up and take their spot, really they just need to show that they can beat the teams that are close to them because, sometimes upsets are one-offs. They
Hmm.
sometimes the team just has a bad game, but you have to show that you can give competition, entertaining competition against a well-matched team, and you simply can't get blown out. I think if they get blown out by either team, I have to think it might ruin their chances unless they, pull off some Big Ten tournament run. And the last year, I'm pretty sure they were out of the Pac-12 tournament after the very first game.
They've been one and done, I think since Amber Melgoza was there. Yeah, I remember. I think I did that the
Yeah.
first show we did.
Yeah, so you simply don't want to be relying on
No.
any sort of conference win, particularly with the talent in the conference. You want to
No. Yeah.
take care of business while you have it in front of you, while you can prepare ahead of time. You'll only get your um, Big Ten tournament opponent so far ahead of time. How that seeding works out, I don't totally know. Don't really know who they would
Yeah.
play. But say they, play Rutgers first round and they beat Rutgers again, or even if they lose to Rutgers, like that
Ugh.
doesn't like that's not going to help them. Even if they
No.
beat Rutgers again, that doesn't do a whole lot to help them unless you can then suddenly, make it and you beat USC or UCLA or Ohio State, Maryland, any of those teams. So, because we don't know how closely the committee is looking at those close losses that Washington had. So you need to
Hmm.
show them that you can also just get straight up wins.
Yeah.
And I think Minnesota and Oregon are the perfect chance to show that. They are teams that you should match up relatively well against. They're not necessarily like you don't really match up well in terms of like in terms of personnel, but in terms of overall talent and where they are considered nationally. Those are the teams that are comparable to you.
It's
So,
interesting looking at this tournament bracket for this year, right? Because obviously they don't have the teams in there, but they have the seeds, right,
hmm.
on the Big Ten website. Um, I don't have we said that the fact that they have clinched a spot? I don't think we've outright said it. But
Oh
after
yeah.
the Rutgers game, they did clinch a spot. I think as Bella and I talked about before we started, um, with the Rutgers win, and I think a few other results helped Washington clinch a spot. And I think we were all kind of surprised the next morning.
Mhm.
I think Bella sent it. It was like, when the hell did they clinch?
Yes, I saw it in
Um,
an email and I was confused.
um, and just looking at this bracket, like if Washington, say Washington's, well, no, they'd have to, okay. It's interesting because right now, with them at the 13 seed, right, they would be the very first game of the tournament and they would play the 12th seed, which currently is Minnesota. Um, so like if they were to win the next two games and they bump up to what, like 11, I don't know how it would work, but then they would host like I don't know. It's interesting. You're gonna see a repeat, obviously, as you would have already, but like I think my point is like you really need to be you do need to win these games because no matter what, you're gonna face these teams again, and I'd rather have a favorable outcome as opposed like either no matter what. Sorry, this is all a jumble after I looked at the bracket. But it's like no matter what, you are in the Big Ten tournament and I hate like people hate this cliche, but I enjoy it because it makes sense to me. You do control your own destiny, right? Like two wins to close out your season, I think it gets you in the tournament. Like you probably be at the very end and you might sweat a little bit, but I think it does it. And unless I think even with whatever you do in the Big Ten tournament, like I think you get in. But it's in their hands. And again, I think I feel pretty good with how the trends have been going. So, um, oh God, I'm so stressed now thinking about it. Jesus, we got a game tomorrow. We got Saturday. Wait, no, Sunday. Sorry, Sunday. I remember I looked that up. Sunday is senior day.
Show up, boo the Ducks. Come on, guys.
Hmm. Even Bella, who isn't a longtime Husky, knows that. I hate Oregon so much.
I have a lot of like family friends too who are like Oregon alums and aggressively
Ugh.
root for the Ducks,
It
who I
was like I
loved.
went and looked back at the box score of that Oregon game too, and like outside like of the second and the fourth quarter, it was such a tight game. Like, ugh, it was so frustrating seeing them go back and forth, and there were times that I really thought Washington had it. Um,
Yeah, that's why I'm hopeful that home court advantage puts them over the edge in the rematch.
and just learning from the game, right?
Yeah,
Like they I'm sure they want to avenge that, right? So,
yeah.
um, yeah, I think how I want to convey what I'm thinking is like the path for them, they have the path and the ability to do this. Like the path is there. Beat these two teams that, as you have mentioned several times, are right above them in the standings and are pretty decently in the thick of the not the tournament, the conference. And it's interesting. I was actually looking at bracketology, and Minnesota and Oregon are in the last four buys. And I'm like, oh, fascinating. Um, and just with how they've been learning, and with like a team like Oregon that they've already faced on their like I feel good about what I'm seeing in terms of how I should feel about them getting into the tournament, right? Like if they had to play, say, one of those big teams like a USC or UCLA now, I wouldn't feel that great, right? Like at least personally, even like an Ohio State. Like the fact that they've played this Oregon team, Oregon isn't as highly touted as some of the other programs. Um, and they've seen them already. Like, I don't know. I feel good about it. We'll have to see after the next episode. Like
Yeah.
that'll be a
I mean,
pretty interesting episode.
yeah.
Um, we'll do that, and then I think I read that the selection show isn't until the 16th. Um, I hate that so much. I hate
Because
that.
I assume it's after the conference tournaments.
Yeah. Selection Sunday on 16th, and then per the Husky website, the Big Ten tournament run. Well, I can look at the bracket. Yeah, March 5th through March 9th. So we'll have like a week in between them. I'm so stressed out, Bella. I just want them to do it so bad. Um, yeah, so we went over the last two games. We talked a bit about Brenna, some bench production, how they've been able to utilize, opportunities when Savia isn't dropping like 25 plus. Some bracketology and looking ahead. Is there anything sort of last call that it maybe got lost in me rambling or anything that you want to look at before we hop on out of here?
Other than people should come out to the last game, attendance has been kind of disappointing on sometimes. And for senior night and like a rivalry matchup, I
Senior
really am
night,
hoping.
Oregon. Yeah, like it's a Sunday,
Yeah,
and it's
I
two
will.
o'clock on a Sunday. So if you got
Yeah,
homework to do, like you can do it after. I don't
yeah.
care. This is
It's a basketball
Oregon.
game. It takes up an hour and a half, 2 hours at
Yes,
most.
yeah. Like there's a
Show up.
timer on this thing.
If you're a student, you get in for free. Frickin' go. It's gonna be great.
As wait, wrong way. As someone who is a student now, like I got out of there last year, but you would know, right?
I
So
I do know, yes.
you've juggled that this year. So, well, in the last 2 years, right? Yeah.
I've been there 2 years, yeah.
So maybe we'll do like a ticket giveaway or something. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'd have to do that pretty soon though.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Yeah, that is I think we're in episode 3 of the let me double check this. The Husky Women's Hoop Show. It's been really fun to do this. I
That's what
mean,
you
there's
said at the beginning, but I don't know if it's correct. For some reason, I feel like there's four, but
Husky Women's.
you gotta look up your own like YouTube.
Yeah, I'm looking at my one, two, yep, two. Because well, then it's funny because when I did Wolf Wednesdays, like I have the a video I did on them on Delia Daniels coming here, which is kind of funny to do this kind of full circle. So yeah, until we see you next time, a stressful week ahead. Jesus. Golden Gophers and Huskies tomorrow on Wednesday. I'll get this out, probably throw this in the quick edits and get this out, and then Sunday against Oregon. Um, before Big Ten tournament, will like you said, we'll have. I do you think we'll know after Sunday, or it might take a few days because there's like what 2 or 3 days between that and the tournament. So I'd hope maybe close after we'd know, right?
Yeah, I think really all they'd be waiting for is if there are any Big Ten games scheduled for later than the Oregon game.
I don't think so.
But some seating might already be um
Pretty
pretty
locked down.
set. Yeah. So it just sort of depends on how the standings are going into the very last games.
So excuse me. Goddamn. Yeah. All right. Well, until we see you next time, take care of yourselves. Be well. Show up to the Oregon game on senior night. As Delia Daniels is a homegrown senior here from Seattle, Washington, as displayed by me making fun of Rowan because she knows Delia from growing up around here. So,
Yeah, I mean, boo Garfield, but if you went to Garfield, so did Delia. So
uh, yeah, as an O'Day guy, I kind of boo Garfield too. But
yeah.
until we see you next time, take care of yourselves. Be well. Do whatever you can to make today a great day.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, how about them Huskies?
Ooh, purple and gold, baby.
Yeah. When are you going to watch all those away games, though?
All those away games. There are a lot of them, and I was hoping to come to Rough and Tumble because this is the home of Circling Seattle Sports. If that's okay with you.
I think that's a great idea. Hope to see you all here.